The wolves were closing in. Alara pressed her back against the frozen oak, her breath clouding white in the moonlit air. Through the skeletal branches above, winter stars glittered with cruel indifference. Her ankle throbbed where she'd twisted it, fleeing the village, fleeing the accusations. The pointed fingers, the word witch hissed like a curse through cobblestone streets. The herbs in her satchel had been her only crime. Feverfew for headaches, willow bark for pain. But fear needed no evidence, only fuel. A howl split the silence, closer now. The pack had tracked her scent 3 miles into the blackwood. Alara's fingers found the knife at her belt, small, practical, meant for cutting roots, not throats. Her hand trembled as she gripped the wooden handle. This is how I die, she thought. Alone, unmourned. The first wolf emerged from the darkness like smoke given form. Its eyes reflected moonlight and amber crescents. Saliva glistened on yellowed fangs. The beast's growl rumbled low, vibrating through frozen earth into her bones. She raised the knife. The blade caught starlight and shivered. The wolf lunged. Alara squeezed her eyes shut and felt nothing. No teeth, no tearing, no pain, only the wet sound of impact and a canine whimper that ended too quickly. She opened her eyes. A figure stood between her and the wolf's body, which now lay crumpled in the snow, its neck twisted at an impossible angle. The figure's back was to her, broad shoulders draped in a black cloak that didn't quite touch the ground. Snowflakes fell around him, but never on him, as if even the weather knew to keep its distance. The remaining wolves circled, snarling. 5 sets of amber eyes burned in the darkness. The figure didn't move, didn't speak, simply stood, and the wolves fled. Their retreat was absolute, no pride-saving growls, no backward glances. Pure, animal terror sent them crashing through undergrowth into the forest's black heart. Silence descended like a held breath. Alara's savior turned slowly, and moonlight found his face. Her knife slipped from nerveless fingers. She knew that face, the aristocratic nose, the sharp jawline, the eyes no longer the soft brown of childhood memory, but something darker, deeper, endless as midnight water. Yet the shape of him, the essence, remained achingly familiar. Sebastian? The name emerged as barely more than a whisper. You're dead. His expression flickered, something almost like pain crossing features, too pale, too perfect, to be entirely human. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of centuries, velvet over stone, a common misconception. The last time Alara had seen Sebastian Thorne, they'd been children. She'd been 9, he 11. He'd been thin and sickly, coughing blood into white handkerchiefs, while village boys twice his size had cornered her near the miller's pond, pulling her hair, calling her father's bastard. Sebastian had stepped between them, weak, trembling Sebastian who could barely run without his lungs seizing. They'd beaten him senseless. She'd held his broken body, his blood warm on her dress, while he'd whispered through split lips, "I'll be strong enough to protect you next time. I promise." 3 days later, his family's manor had burned. No survivors, the magistrate had declared. The Thorne bloodline, extinct. That had been 16 years ago. And now he stood before her, impossible, unchanged, radiating a predatory stillness that made her hindbrain scream run, even as her heart stuttered with recognition and something dangerously close to relief. "You haven't aged a day." Her voice cracked on the observation. "No." He stepped closer. His boots made no sound on the frozen leaves. "I haven't." Candlelight from distant village windows flickered gold through the trees behind her, warmth and humanity a world away. Here, in this pocket of winter darkness, only the two of them existed. "What are you?" though she suspected, though the evidence stood before her in too pale skin, in eyes that reflected moonlight like a cat's, in the unnatural grace of his movements. Sebastian's smile held no joy. "What I needed to become." He moved with inhuman speed, closing the distance between them. One moment he stood 5 feet away. The next, his hand wrapped gently around her wrist, steadying her as her injured ankle buckled. His touch was cool marble, smooth and unyielding. "You're hurt." Not a question. His gaze dropped to her foot, then rose to meet hers. This close, she could see the subtle wrongness of him, the absolute stillness of his chest. No breath, no heartbeat, vibrating through his palm where it pressed her skin. "The village? They think I poisoned the miller's wife." Bitterness leaked through her exhaustion. "I tried to save her. But suspicion outweighs evidence when you're alone and different." Understanding darkened his expression. He'd been different too, once. weak where others were strong, bookish where they were brutal. "Come with me." His grip on her wrist tightened fractionally, not painful but inescapable. "You'll freeze out here, or the wolves will return with reinforcements." "Come where?" "Somewhere safe. Somewhere they can't touch you." Warning bells rang in the remnants of her rational mind. Safe could mean many things. Prison, lair, tomb. But the alternative was freezing to death in the Blackwood, or limping back to the village to face the hangman's noose. She searched his face for the boy she'd known, the gentle soul who'd spent his short life reading poetry and pressing wildflowers into books. She found only shadows and the terrible patience of something that had learned to wait. "What do you want from me, Sebastian?" His thumb moved across her pulse point, feeling the thrum of her mortality perhaps, the heat of her blood. "To keep a promise." His voice dropped lower, intimate and devastating. "I told you I'd be strong enough to protect you next time." The words hung between them, heavy with implication. "And what does your protection cost?" A muscle twitched in his jaw, the first hint of anything approaching emotion since he'd appeared. "That," he said softly, "remains to be seen." Without waiting for her answer, he bent and lifted her into his arms as if she weighed nothing. The world tilted. She gasped, instinctively clutching his shoulders. Through the fabric of his cloak, his body felt carved from winter itself, solid, cold, unyielding. "I didn't agree. You're injured, freezing, hunted." He began walking, each step effortless despite her weight and the uneven terrain. Trees blurred past with impossible speed. "You can argue with me in front of a fire. With food. After you've decided whether you prefer my company to a noose." She should fight, scream, something, but exhaustion dragged at her bones, and the heat of his earlier question still burned. "What do you want?" The truth lodged in her throat like a stone. She wanted to live. She wanted safety. She wanted, God help her, to understand what had become of the boy who'd bled for her. She wanted to know if the monster wearing his face remembered how to be human. "Where are you taking me?" she whispered against his shoulder. His answer came as soft as falling snow, and twice as cold. "Home." The manor rose from the hillside like a monument to forgotten grandeur. Alara had expected ruins, blackened stone, and collapsed timber, the skeletal remains of the fire that had supposedly consumed the Thorn estate. Instead, iron gates swung open at Sebastian's approach, hinges silent despite decades of apparent disuse. Beyond them, a cobblestone drive wound through gardens where winter roses bloomed in defiance of the season, their petals black as mourning cloth. The house itself stood 3 stories tall, its windows dark except for a single light burning in the eastern tower. Gothic spires pierced the clouded sky. Gargoyles perched along the roofline, their stone faces twisted in expressions of eternal anguish. "It's exactly as I remember," Alara breathed, then caught herself. "But it burned," everyone said. Everyone was mistaken. Sebastian's tone discouraged further inquiry. He carried her up marble steps worn smooth by generations of footfalls, toward doors carved with intricate patterns, vines and thorns, predator and prey, locked in an eternal dance. The doors opened before he touched them. Warmth rushed out to meet them, carrying the scent of beeswax and old leather and something underneath, something copper-sweet that made her stomach tighten. The entrance hall stretched vast and shadowed, lit by candles and iron sconces. A grand staircase curved upward into darkness. Portraits lined the walls, generations of Thornes watching with painted eyes, their expressions severe. Sebastian set her down carefully, steadying her when she swayed. Her injured ankle protested even the gentlest pressure. "Don't move." He vanished. One moment he stood beside her. The next, only empty air, remained. Alara's pulse hammered. The candlelight seemed to pulse with it, throwing distorted shadows across marble floors, inlaid with patterns that hurt to look at, 2 long geometric designs that spiraled inward, suggesting depths the floor couldn't possibly contain. He reappeared just as suddenly, holding a wooden chair. The speed of it defied comprehension. Her mind tried to process movement that fast and simply. Skipped, like a scratched phonograph record. Sit. Not a command, but not quite a request either. She sank into the chair, wincing. Sebastian knelt before her with that same impossible grace, his hands moving to her boot. She jerked back instinctively. His eyes met hers. In the candlelight, they held flecks of crimson she hadn't noticed in the forest, tiny embers in dark water. "I need to examine the injury." Unless you'd prefer to do it yourself? Heat crept up her neck. Her ankle throbbed with each heartbeat, the pain radiating up her calf. Professional pride warred with fear. She was a healer. She'd set bones, stitched wounds, delivered breaths into still lungs. But something about his proximity, the casual intimacy of his position, sent alarm bells ringing through her nervous system. I can manage. Can you? His fingers hovered near her bootlaces. You're shaking. She was. From cold, from shock, from the impossible reality of sitting in a dead boy's resurrected mansion while he knelt at her feet like a penitent. Let me help you, Alara. Her name in his mouth sounded like a prayer, like a spell. She nodded once, not trusting her voice. He unlaced her boot with careful precision, easing it off. Even through her stocking, she could feel the chill of his touch. He probed her ankle with gentle pressure, his expression clinical, detached. But when his thumb pressed against a particularly tender spot, and she hissed, something flickered across his face. Concern, perhaps, or the ghost of it. Sprained, not broken. You're fortunate. Fortunate. A laugh scraped her throat. I'm in a vampire's lair with a twisted ankle and a murder charge waiting in the village. My luck is extraordinary. His hand stilled. When he looked up, his expression had gone carefully blank. I haven't used that word. You don't need to. She gestured at him at the unnatural stillness, the marble skin, the eyes that caught light wrong. I've read the old texts. My grandmother's journals. She hunted your kind. Interest sparked in his gaze. Did she? Before the church burned her. They called her mad. Alara's jaw tightened. Turns out she was simply inconveniently correct. Sebastian rose fluidly, putting distance between them. He moved to a side table where crystal decanters caught candlelight like captured stars. When he poured, the liquid ran dark as garnets. Wine, he said, offering her a glass. Nothing more sinister, I promise. She accepted it warily, sniffing. The bouquet was rich, complex, definitely wine. She sipped. Warmth bloomed. Across her tongue, spreading through her chest. Your grandmother's journals, Sebastian said quietly. What did they teach you about? My kind? That you're predators. That you survive on blood. That sunlight kills you. She paused. That some of you were human once. All of us were human once. He stared into his own untouched glass. That's the tragedy. The vulnerability in those words made her chest ache. This was the Sebastian she remembered. The boy who'd felt too deeply. Who'd carried the weight of the world's cruelty like stones in his pockets. What happened to you? She asked softly. The fire. Your family. How did you survive? His smile was bitter. I didn't. Not in any way that matters. Silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken histories. Outside, wind moaned against ancient stone. A log shifted in some distant fireplace, sending sparks flying. You should rest, Sebastian said finally. We'll talk more when you've recovered. I'm not staying. Aren't you? He moved to the window, pulling back heavy velvet curtains. Through the glass, the village lights twinkled in the valley below, tiny, unreachable stars. You have nowhere else to go. No one waiting. No one who believes you innocent. The truth of it settled like ice in her stomach. So I'm a prisoner. You're a guest. He let the curtain fall, shadow reclaiming his features. But if you try to leave before dawn, the wolves will finish what they started, and I won't be there to stop them. Why? The question burst from her. Why save me? Why bring me here? What do you want? Sebastian crossed the space between them in 3 silent strides. He crouched before her chair again, close enough that she could see the absence of breath disturbing his lips, the terrible perfection of his skin. 16 years ago, you held me while I died. You didn't run, didn't scream. You whispered that it would be all right, even though we both knew it wouldn't. His hand rose slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his fingers brushed her cheek with impossible gentleness. You showed me mercy when I least deserved it, when I was weak and broken and useless. His touch trailed down her jaw, coming to rest against her thundering pulse. Now, he whispered, I'm strong enough to return the favor. Sleep eluded her. Alara lay in a 4-poster bed draped with burgundy velvet, staring at the canopy's embroidered patterns. Sebastian had led her to this room, the guest chamber. He'd called it before disappearing with a promise to send up food and supplies for her ankle. That had been an hour ago. Or 3. Time felt distorted here, stretched thin and strange. The room itself was beautiful in a melancholic way. Tapestries depicting pastoral scenes covered stone walls. A fire crackled in the hearth, but its warmth couldn't quite reach the corners where shadows pooled like liquid darkness. On the nightstand sat a silver tray bearing bread, cheese, and wine she hadn't touched. Her grandmother's voice echoed through memory. Never eat in a vampire's home. Never accept their gifts. Every kindness is a chain. But her grandmother had also been burned alive for speaking truth, so perhaps her wisdom had limits. Alara's ankle throbbed despite the tight binding Sebastian had applied with surprising skill. His hands had been steady, clinical, yet she'd felt the restraint in every movement, as if touching her required immense concentration, as if he were holding something monstrous at bay through sheer will. "What are you so afraid of?" she'd wanted to ask. The answer, she suspected, would terrify them both. A sound pulled her from spiraling thoughts, footsteps in the corridor outside. Too light to be human, too deliberate to be natural. They stopped outside her door. "Alara," Sebastian's voice, muffled by thick wood. "May I enter? May I?" Even immortal predators, it seemed, observed certain courtesies. Yes. He entered carrying a leather-bound book and what looked like strips of linen. Candlelight from the hallway silhouetted him before he closed the door, and for a moment he appeared almost wholly a dark angel come to deliver judgment or salvation. "You're not sleeping." He approached the bed slowly, giving her time to object. When she didn't, he settled into the chair beside it, movements precise and contained. "Neither are you. I don't sleep. Not anymore. Not as you understand it." He set the book on his lap, fingers tracing its spine. "Sometimes I enter a state like dreaming, but it's not rest. It's more like drowning, over and over, until sunset releases me." The casual horror of it struck her silent. He spoke of torment the way others discussed the weather. "The binding on your ankle needs changing," he continued, gesturing to the linen strips. "The swelling has increased." She glanced down. Her foot had indeed swollen, straining against the cloth he'd wrapped earlier. Heat radiated from the joint, her body's attempt to heal itself through inflammation. "I can do it." "You can barely reach it comfortably. Let me—" He waited, that preternatural patience radiating from him like cold from stone. She nodded, watching as he set the book aside and moved to sit on the bed's edge. The mattress didn't shift under his weight, as if even gravity recognized him as something other, something exempt from normal rules. His fingers worked the binding loose with practiced efficiency. The intimacy of it, his hands on her bare skin, the focused intensity of his attention made her breath catch. "You've done this before," she observed. "Tended injuries. I've caused enough of them." Learning to mend seemed appropriate penance. He rewrapped her ankle with fresh linen, his touch feather-light. "There. That should hold until morning." "Thank you." He didn't move away. Instead, he remained there, too close, his gaze fixed on where his hand still rested against her calf. Through her thin nightgown, another garment he'd provided, another chain accepted, she could feel the chill of him seeping into her flesh. "Your skin is so warm," he murmured almost to himself. "I'd forgotten." How the living burn like small suns. Something in his tone, longing, loss, hunger, made her pulse spike. His eyes tracked upward, following the line of her leg to where her heart hammered visible proof of her mortality against her throat. "Sebastian," her voice came out breathier than intended. "How long have you been what you are?" 16 years. His hand withdrew from her leg, curling into a fist on his thigh. "Since the night I died in your arms. Tell me what happened." For a long moment she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he rose and crossed to the window, putting the width of the room between them. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of confession. "After the beating, after you held me, I was brought home to die properly, in my own bed, surrounded by family. The doctors said my lungs were filling with blood, that I had perhaps a day, maybe two." He touched the glass, fingers leaving no print on its surface. "I didn't want to die, Alara. I was so angry, at my weakness, at the world's cruelty, at God for making me breakable." She listened, barely breathing, as his reflection stared back from darkness beyond the window. Someone heard that anger, something old, powerful, drawn to rage and desperation like a shark to blood. His jaw tightened. "He offered me a choice, death or transformation, strength eternal, in exchange for what I was. You accepted. I was 11 years old and drowning in my own blood. Of course I accepted. Bitterness threaded his words. I didn't understand the cost, that I'd have to kill my family to complete the change, that their blood would be my first meal, my baptism into damnation. Horror and grief tangled in her chest. The fire wasn't an accident. No, it was mercy. I couldn't let anyone know what I'd become, what I'd done. He turned from the window, and the rawness in his expression made her want to reach for him despite every instinct screaming caution. I burned the evidence, burned the bodies, burned the boy I'd been, until only ash remained. But you survived. Something did. Something wearing my face. He returned to the chair, sinking into it with sudden weariness. I left, wandered, learned what I was from others of my kind, built control, learned to feed without killing, tried to become something other than a monster. And you came back, 3 years ago. This house called to me, my maker's magic perhaps, or simple, stupid nostalgia. His gaze found hers, intense and searching. I've watched the village from afar, seen it grow, change. And I've seen you, Alara, walking the same paths we walked as children, helping people who fear you, offering mercy to a world that offers you none. Her breath caught. You've been watching me? Not hunting, never that. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, remembering what it felt like to be human, to care about someone beyond hunger and survival. The admission hung between them, dangerous and electric. Outside, an owl called once, twice, then silence. The book you brought, Alara said, desperate to shift ground that had become treacherous. What is it? Sebastian glanced at the leather tome. My family's history, records of this bloodline going back centuries. I thought, you might want to understand what you've walked into, what I am, beyond the monster. He offered it to her, and she took it carefully, feeling the weight of years in its binding. The cover bore a coat of arms, a rose entwined with thorns beneath a crown. Knowledge is dangerous, he warned, especially here. The more you learn, the harder it becomes to leave. Maybe, Alara said, meeting his eyes. I don't want to leave. The word surprised them both. Sebastian's expression shifted hope and fear, and something darker, something hungry, flickering across his features before control reasserted itself. Be careful what you wish for, he whispered. This house has a way of keeping what it claims. The scream tore through Alara's dreams like a blade through silk. She jolted upright, heart hammering, the leather-bound book tumbling from where it had rested on her chest. Pale dawn light filtered through the curtains she'd fallen asleep reading. The Thorne family history still swimming behind her eyes in fragments of Latin and faded ink. Another scream. Female. Raw with terror. Alara threw off the covers, her ankle protesting as she stumbled toward the door. The hallway stretched cold and empty, lit by guttering candles that cast dancing shadows across portrait-lined walls. The sound had come from below, from the depths of the manor. Sebastian! Her voice echoed unanswered. She limped toward the grand staircase, each step sending jolts of pain through her leg. The house felt different in daylight, less gothic romance, more mausoleum. Dust motes swirled in weak sunbeams that barely penetrated the gloom. The scream came again, cut short. Then silence, thick and suffocating. Alara descended as quickly as her injury allowed, one hand gripping the banister, the other clutching her nightgown. At the base of the stairs, a trail of something dark stained the marble floor liquid, glistening, leading toward the eastern wing. Blood. Her healer's instincts overrode fear. She followed the trail, her bare feet silent on cold stone. The corridor narrowed, older than the grand entrance, its walls bare stone rather than papered elegance. The blood drops became smears, as if something had been dragged. A door stood ajar at the corridor's end, revealing flickering firelight beyond. Alara pushed it open. The room was a study shelves crammed with ancient texts, a desk scattered with papers and strange instruments she couldn't name. In the center, Sebastian knelt beside a woman's crumpled form. His shirt was torn, revealing pale skin marked with scratches that were already healing. The flesh knitting together like time-lapse footage. The woman young, perhaps 20, with copper hair matted with blood, lay unconscious. Her dress was shredded, revealing wounds that leaked crimson onto the floor. But they weren't bite marks, they were claw marks, deep and savage. What happened? Alara moved forward, dropping beside them. Her hands went automatically to the woman's throat, seeking a pulse. Thready, but present. Hunters. Sebastian's voice was granite. They sent her as bait, filled her with wolfsbane and silver powder, made her blood poison. She stumbled to my door at dawn, begging for sanctuary. And you let her in? I didn't have a choice. The invitation magic once offered at the threshold. It can't be rescinded until the guest leaves willingly or... He didn't finish. Or dies. Alara examined the wounds more closely. The edges were ragged, infected. Something had clawed this woman with deliberate cruelty. These aren't your marks. No. They set their hounds on her first, wanted her desperate enough to seek any shelter. His hands clenched. The moment she crossed the threshold, they attacked, tried to follow her in. But they couldn't. The wards held. Barely. He gestured to the doorway, where scorch marks now decorated the frame evidence of magic tested. They're still out there, waiting. As if summoned by his words, a howl rose from beyond the manor walls. Not wolves. Something worse. Something that understood strategy and sadism. We need to stop the bleeding. Alara's training kicked in, pushing aside terror. Do you have supplies? Clean cloth? Needle? Thread? Sebastian vanished and reappeared within seconds, arms full of materials. Will she live? I don't know. The poison in her system. Alara tore strips of cloth, pressing them to the worst wounds. Blood soaked through immediately. The wolfsbane is burning her from inside. And the silver. If it reached her bloodstream, then she's dying. Not a question. Yes. Alara met his gaze. Unless. Understanding darkened his expression. No. You could save her. By turning her. Making her what I am. What they hunt. He stood abruptly, pacing like a caged predator. Do you understand what you're asking? The curse I'd pass to her? An eternity of hunger and isolation? Better than death. Is it? He whirled on her. Is immortality watching everyone you love wither and die while you remain unchanged? Is it the constant fight against instinct? Against the urge to rip throats and drain bodies? Is it knowing you're a weapon that thinks, a monster playing at civilization? The anguish in his voice stopped her breath. This was the question that haunted him, not what he was, but whether existence as that thing held any value. She's 20 years old, Alara said quietly. She deserves the choice you were given, even if the cost is high. The woman's breathing had gone shallow, rattling. Minutes, maybe. Then nothing. Sebastian knelt again, his hand hovering over the dying girl's face. If I do this, she'll be bound to me. My bloodline, my maker's curse. She'll be mine to teach, to control, to destroy if she becomes a threat. Then teach her well. Alara placed her hand over his, feeling the marble coolness of undead flesh. Show her what you've learned. How to be more than hunger. Their eyes locked. In his gaze, she saw 16 years of loneliness, of walking the knife's edge between man and monster, of wanting, desperately, to believe redemption was possible. If she wakes and curses me for this, then she wakes. That's more than she has now. Sebastian closed his eyes, a muscle working in his jaw. Then, with decisive swiftness, he bit his own wrist. Black blood welled, thick and viscous. He pressed the wound to the woman's lips, forcing them open, letting the blood drip into her mouth. Drink, he commanded, voice resonating with unnatural power. Drink and live. The woman's throat convulsed. Once, twice. Her body arched, back bowing off the floor. A sound between a gasp and a scream tore from her throat. Then she went utterly still. Did it work? Alara whispered. Sebastian placed his hand over the woman's heart, waiting, listening for something only he could hear. I don't... The woman's eyes snapped open. Not brown anymore. Not human. Crimson as fresh blood, as burning coals, as damnation made visible. She lunged at Alara with inhuman speed, fangs bared, all trace of humanity stripped away by newborn hunger. Sebastian caught her mid-leap, slamming her back to the floor with controlled violence. No, not her. Never her. The woman thrashed in his grip, snarling, all animal fury and desperate need. Her wounds were healing rapidly, flesh knitting, but the hunger in her eyes was bottomless. She needs blood, Alara said, backing away despite herself. Real blood. Soon, or she'll lose herself completely. Sebastian's gaze found hers, and the question in his eyes made her stomach drop. There are hunters outside, she continued, fighting to keep her voice steady. Men who did this to her. Men who would have watched her die for bait. Understanding flickered across his features. I'm suggesting justice has teeth. Alara wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold. And maybe it's time the hunters became the hunted. Sebastian's smile was terrible, beautiful, absolutely inhuman. Stay here. Bar the door. Don't open it for anyone but me. He released the thrashing newborn vampire, who immediately lunged for Alara again. Sebastian caught her by the throat, lifting her effortlessly. Listen to me, he commanded, his voice carrying layers of compulsion. The woman in this room is under my protection. You will not harm her. You will protect her. Do you understand? The newborn's struggles slowed. Her crimson eyes fixed on Alara, no longer seeing prey, but something else. Something to guard. Good. Sebastian set her down. Carefully. Watch over her. I'll return shortly. With food. He moved to the window, throwing back the heavy curtains. Sunlight poured in and stopped at his shadow's edge, as if hitting an invisible barrier. Beyond the glass, figures moved in the tree line, men with crossbows and torches, their faces grim with righteous determination. Alara, Sebastian said without turning. When I'm done, there will be bodies. Perhaps more than these few. Perhaps the entire hunting party. I need you to understand I understand. And she did. The cost of safety, the price of survival, the terrible mathematics of protecting the hunted by becoming the hunter. Sebastian's reflection in the glass smiled, fangs catching light. Then watch, little healer. Watch what your mercy has unleashed. He shattered the window and dropped into sunlight that should have destroyed him but didn't. And the screaming began. The screaming lasted 7 minutes. Alara counted each one, her back pressed against the study's locked door, while the newborn vampire paced the perimeter like a caged wolf. Through the shattered window, the sounds of slaughter painted pictures her mind couldn't stop constructing: the wet snap of breaking bone, the gurgling cutoff of final breaths, the meaty thud of bodies hitting frozen earth. Then, silence. Worse than the screaming, infinitely worse. The newborn stopped pacing, her head cocking toward the window with predatory alertness. Her copper hair had darkened with drying blood, and the wounds across her torso had sealed completely, leaving only pale scars that would likely fade by nightfall. He's coming back, the girl whispered. Her voice carried a strange duality, human speech wrapped around inhuman resonance. I can hear his heartbeat. Except, he doesn't have one. But I hear it anyway. How? The blood bond, Alara said, remembering fragments from Sebastian's family history. He's your maker. You'll always sense him now. My maker. The girl tested the words like a foreign language. My name is Clara. I remember that much. Clara Ashford. I had a mother, a little brother. I was walking home from the market when they... Her voice cracked, memory colliding with new reality. What am I? Before Alara could answer, Sebastian appeared at the window. He climbed through with fluid grace, landing in a crouch. Blood painted him from collar to boots, splattered across his face, soaked into his shirt, dripping from his hands. None of it his own. He looked like a painting of divine retribution. Beautiful and terrible and utterly inhuman. Clara fell to her knees immediately, head bowed, as if pulled by invisible strings. Master? No, Sebastian's voice cut sharp. Not master, never that. I'm Sebastian, you're Clara, and you bow to no one, least of all me. Stand up. The compulsion in his tone lifted her like puppet strings. She rose unsteadily, confusion warring with instinct across her features. Alara found her voice. The hunters? Dead. All 12. Sebastian moved to the wash basin in the corner, methodically cleaning blood from his hands. The water ran pink, then red, then clear as he worked. I was efficient. Efficient. The clinical word for butchery. Alara's stomach churned, but she forced herself to meet his eyes. And the bodies? In the forest. Animals will scatter them by nightfall. Evidence of their camp. I burned. He dried his hands on a cloth, each movement precise, controlled. No one will know they came here. To the village, they'll simply be missing. Vanished like so many others who enter the Blackwood unprepared. Clara made a small sound, relief or grief, impossible to tell. They would have killed me, used me as bait, and then burned what remained. Why? Alara asked. Why target you specifically? My mother sees things, dreams that come true. The village called her touched by God. Clara's laugh was bitter. The hunters called her touched by demons. They said our family carried witch blood. that we were corruption spreading through good Christian stock. The parallels to Alara's own situation weren't lost on anyone in the room. Sebastian finished cleaning himself, though blood still stained his clothing. You need to feed, Clara. Properly. The transformation won't complete without it. Clara wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly looking impossibly young. The hunger, it's like fire under my skin. Like drowning. I can hear your hearts, both of you, beating, beating, beating. And all I want is to make them stop, to drink until the burning ends. I know. Sebastian approached her slowly, as one might a frightened animal. I remember. The first hours are worst. Your body is dying and being reborn simultaneously, caught between states. The hunger is your mind's way of processing transformation. Will it always feel like this? No. In a few days, you'll learn control. How to sate the hunger without killing. How to choose your prey ethically. Take only what you need. He glanced at Alara. How to live alongside humans without constantly fighting the urge to feed. The weight of his gaze made her pulse quicken. She wondered how often he fought that urge with her. How many times since bringing her here had he stood at the edge of control, hunger and restraint, locked in silent battle. There's blood, Sebastian continued, addressing Clara. From the hunters. Still warm. It's not ideal for your first feeding tainted with fear and adrenaline, but it will sustain you until we can arrange something better. Clara's eyes blazed crimson at the mention of blood. Where? I'll show you. But first you make me a vow. Sebastian's voice dropped, taking on layers of command. You will never take an innocent life, never feed from children, never kill unless survival demands it, and you will protect this woman, he gestured to Alara, with whatever strength you possess. Her life matters more than yours, more than mine, swear it. The compulsion in his words vibrated through the air like struck crystal. Clara's body went rigid, fighting and succumbing simultaneously. I swear, she gasped. On whatever remains of my soul, I swear it. The oath settled into place with almost physical weight. Alara felt it a shift in the air, in the threads of reality connecting the three of them. Magic older than Christianity, older than Rome, binding them together. Good, Sebastian relaxed fractionally. Come, feed, then rest. Tomorrow will begin your real education. He led Clara toward the door, then paused, looking back at Alara. You should rest as well. This has been traumatic. I've seen death before. But not like this. Not wholesale slaughter, however justified. You've seen death in sickbeds and accidents. Natural endings to natural lives. His expression softened with something dangerously close to tenderness. This was murder. I won't insult you by calling it anything else, and I won't apologize for protecting what's mine. What's mine? The possessive pronoun hung between them, weighted with meaning. I'm not yours, Sebastian. Aren't you? He tilted his head, studying her with unnerving intensity. You're in my home, under my protection, wearing clothes I provided, eating food I supplied. You've accepted my hospitality, my shelter, my violence on your behalf. He took a step closer, then another, until only inches separated them. At what point does a guest become something more? Her breath caught. This close, she could see the remnants of humanity in him, the boy who'd bled for her, who'd read poetry and pressed flowers. But she could also see the predator, the thing that had just killed 12 men without hesitation or remorse. I don't know, she whispered. Neither do I. His hand rose slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his knuckles brushed her cheek with arctic gentleness. But I think we're about to find out. Clara cleared her throat pointedly from the doorway. The burning is getting worse. Sebastian's hand dropped. The moment shattered like dropped glass. Coming. He moved toward Clara, then paused at the threshold. Alara, the book I gave you read the chapter on blood bonds. On what ties maker to progeny, predator to protected. I think you'll find it illuminating. Then he was gone, Clara following like a shadow, leaving Alara alone in a room that smelled of copper and consequence. She moved to the window, looking out at where bodies had fallen. The snow was churned and stained, evidence of violence that would disappear with the next storm, as if 12 lives hadn't ended in those trees, as if the world would simply continue, indifferent to absence. Her grandmother's voice echoed, "Every kindness is a chain." But what, Alara wondered, if she was tired of being free? What if the chains felt like safety? Like belonging? Like home? The chapter on blood bonds was written in Latin, But Alara had learned enough from her grandmother's plies, journals to translate. She sat curled in the window seat of her room, afternoon light fading to dusk as she worked through the archaic text. Each revelation sent ice through her veins, understanding crystallizing into something that felt dangerously close to fate. A maker's blood, once accepted, creates ties that transcend mortality. The progeny becomes extension of will, bound by invisible threads of power and protection. But the bond flows both ways. The maker carries responsibility eternal, feeling the progeny's pain, hunger, death. She thought of Sebastian's face when Clara had thrashed in newborn agony, the way he'd felt it, absorbed it, borne it like physical weight. More rare but documented in ancient texts. The bond of protection, when a vampire claims a mortal as theirs through oath, through blood shared but not transformed, through simple declaration witnessed by magic, that mortal becomes sanctuary. To harm them is to invite the maker's wrath. To threaten them is to challenge the bloodline itself. "What's mine?" Sebastian had said. Not possession, declaration. Alara's fingers trembled as she turned the page. The next section made her breath stop entirely. Warning to those who would claim mortals. Protection demands price. The vampire must feed near them, sustaining proximity through blood bond. Distance weakens the tie, but closeness kindles other hungers, not merely for blood, but for the warmth of living flesh, the intimacy of trust freely given. Many makers have destroyed what they sought to protect, unable to maintain the delicate balance between guardian and predator. A knock at her door made her jump. The book tumbled from her lap. "Alara?" Sebastian's voice, muffled by wood. "May I enter?" She wanted to say no, wanted time to process what she'd learned, what it meant that he'd given her this knowledge. But she found herself saying, yes. He entered wearing fresh clothes, a simple white shirt and black trousers that somehow made him look more dangerous than the blood-soaked warrior from earlier. His hair was damp, recently washed. He'd fed, she realized. The slight warmth to his skin, the faint color in his lips, the steadiness in his hands, all signs of recent blood. "Clara's resting," he said, noting her scrutiny. "The first feeding is always intense. She'll sleep until nightfall. And you?" Alara picked up the fallen book, clutching it like a shield. "How do you feel? Satisfied? Guilty? Grateful?" He moved to the fireplace, adding a log with unnecessary precision. "The usual contradictions of my existence. You killed for us today." "I did. Without hesitation." "None." He straightened, meeting her eyes across the room. "Should I have hesitated? Shown mercy to men who poisoned a girl and set her up to die? Who would have burned you as a witch had they found you instead?" "No." The answer came easier than it should have. "But I wonder how easily violence comes to you now. Whether you still feel it, or if it's just reflex." Pain flickered across his features, genuine, raw. "I feel everything. That's the curse. Human emotions trapped in a monster's body, screaming at every atrocity I commit. The guilt doesn't fade. It accumulates, pressing down like stones until I can barely move beneath the weight." She stood, crossing to him despite wisdom, screaming caution. "Then why do it? Because some things matter more than my damnation." His hand rose, hovering near her face without touching. "Some people are worth another stone on the pile." The words hit her like a physical blow. She realized, suddenly, what he'd been trying to tell her since the moment he'd saved her from the wolves. That she mattered to him. Had always mattered. That 16 years of wandering and learning control had been preparation for this, for being strong enough to protect her properly. "The book," she said, voice unsteady. "The chapter on blood bonds. You knew what it would tell me." "Yes. That you've claimed me. Declared me yours in a way that has magical weight." "Yes. When? When did you speak the claim?" Sebastian's jaw tightened. "In the forest. When I killed the wolf. The moment I decided you would never be harmed again. That I would spend eternity ensuring your safety." He stopped, struggling for control. The magic doesn't need formal words. Just intent. Just will made manifest through power. "So I'm bound to you." Not a question. The evidence sang through her bones, the way the house welcomed her, the way Clara had immediately recognized her as protected, the way Sebastian seemed to know when she was frightened or in pain. Not bound, protected. There's a difference. "Is there?" She stepped closer, into his space, reckless with new understanding. "The book says the bond requires proximity, that you must feed near me to maintain it. That distance weakens the connection until it breaks. It does. And if I leave? Go far away? His expression shattered, revealing depths of loneliness that made her chest ache. Then the protection fades, and you become vulnerable again, mortal and hunted and entirely breakable. But you would let me go. Of course. The words sounded like they cost him everything. I claimed you to protect you, Alara, not to cage you. If freedom is what you choose, I'll endure the loss of the bond. The knowledge that you're out there, unguarded, in danger. His voice cracked. I'll endure it, because your choice matters more than my peace. Tears burned her eyes. This was the boy she remembered, the one who'd taken beatings meant for her, who'd valued her freedom over his own survival. Death and transformation hadn't destroyed that core of self-sacrificing devotion. If anything, immortality had refined it into something sharp enough to cut. What if I don't want to leave? Hope flared in his eyes, dangerous and desperate. Don't say that unless you mean it. I mean it. And she did. The realization settled through her like stones finding their resting place in a riverbed. I have nothing out there. No family, no home, no place where I'm not feared or hunted. But here, she gestured around the room, at the house, at him. Here I could be useful, teach Clara about healing, about controlling instincts, help you remember what it means to be human. That's not enough reason to stay. He closed his eyes, fighting something internal. You deserve more than utility, more than becoming a vampire's moral compass. What if I want it? She reached up, fingers finding his jaw, turning his face toward hers. His skin was cool but not cold-fed, almost human. What if I choose this? Choose you? Alara. Her name was prayer and warning combined. The book mentioned another bond, rarer than maker and progeny, deeper than protection. Her pulse thundered in her ears, blood shared but not transformed. Mortal and vampire, connected through choice and consent. A partnership, an equal exchange. His eyes opened, crimson bleeding into the darkness. You don't know what you're suggesting. Then explain it. Sebastian caught her wrist, pulling her hand from his face but not releasing it. His thumb found her pulse, pressing against the frantic rhythm. It's called the covenant bond. The vampire takes blood, but stops before the transformation threshold. The mortal offers freely, repeatedly, creating a connection that benefits both. The vampire gains sustenance without killing. The mortal gains protection, extended life, increased healing. His grip tightened fractionally, but the intimacy of it sharing blood, feeling each other's pleasure and pain, existing in each other's awareness, it's more binding than marriage, more permanent than death. And you're afraid of it, terrified. The admission came raw. Because once formed, the bond can't be broken except through death. And if I lose control, if I take too much, you die. Or worse, you transform without consent, becoming what I am through my weakness rather than your choice. But you've learned control. Have I? His other hand rose to her throat, fingers spreading across her pulse. Not threatening, measuring. You're here, alive and warm, your heart beating against my palm. And all I want is to bite down, to taste you, to know you from inside. The hunger never stops, Alara. I just get better at ignoring it. She should be terrified. Every survival instinct screamed at her to run. But she'd spent her life healing people who feared her, helping those who called her witch, giving and giving to a world that only took. Maybe it was time to be selfish. To choose something, someone for herself. I trust you, she whispered. You shouldn't. I do anyway. She tilted her head, exposing her throat further. An offering, a challenge. Show me. The bond. What it feels like. No. Why? Because. His control cracked, voice dropping to something inhuman. Because if I taste you, I'll never let you go. Then don't let go. The words left, Alara's lips before wisdom could stop them. Sebastian went utterly still, a predator frozen at the scent of prey. But his eyes, God, his eyes held such anguish, such desperate hunger warring with devotion. You don't understand what you're asking. His fingers trembled against her throat, the first crack in his legendary control. The covenant isn't gentle. It's not romantic. It's primal and consuming, and it will change everything between us. Good. She covered his hand with hers, pressing his palm harder against her pulse. I'm tired of being unchanged, tired of existing on the margins, always afraid, always alone. You said I was yours. Prove it. Make it real. A growl rumbled from his chest, inhuman warning. Alara, I consent. She spoke the words clearly, formally, the way the book had indicated. Sebastian Thorne, I offer my blood freely. I accept the covenant bond. I choose this. I choose you. The air shifted, magic responding to oath spoken in truth. Sebastian's pupils dilated until only crimson remained, beautiful and terrible, his control shattered like glass. He moved with blurring speed, backing her against the wall beside the fireplace. Not violent, but inexorable. His body pressed against hers, cool and solid, pinning her in place. One hand cradled the back of her head, fingers tangling in her hair. The other remained at her throat, thumb stroking the frantic flutter of her pulse. Last chance, he whispered against her ear. Walk away. I'll release the protection bond, give you money, help you start somewhere new. You'll be free of me. I don't want to be free of you. Her hands fisted in his shirt, holding him close. I want to matter to someone. To be chosen. To stop running. Something in him broke. Or perhaps surrendered. You matter, he breathed. God help me, you're all that matters. His lips brushed her throat, not biting yet, just tasting. Learning her. His tongue traced the path of her artery, following the blood's flow beneath skin. The sensation was electric, intimate beyond anything she'd imagined. A whimper escaped her. That's it. His voice had gone dark velvet, hypnotic. Don't be afraid. I'll make this good for you. The covenant should be pleasure, not pain. Do you trust me? Yes. No hesitation. Then relax. Let me in. His fangs emerged. She felt them. Needle-sharp points dimpling her skin. Her heart raced, flooding her system with adrenaline. Fear and desire tangled until she couldn't distinguish between them. He bit. The pain was sharp, bright, a flash of lightning. Then it dissolved into something else entirely. Warmth spread from the wound, pleasure so intense her knees buckled. Sebastian caught her, holding her upright as he drank, as her blood flowed into him, as the bond snapped into place like a key turning in a lock. Oh, she felt him. Not just his body against hers, but his mind, his emotions, his hunger satisfied and deepening simultaneously. The guilt he carried, heavy as mountains. The loneliness of 16 years walking between worlds. The desperate love he'd held for her since childhood, transformed by time and curse into something darker, more possessive, but no less true. And beneath it all, the pleasure he took from her blood. It wasn't just sustenance. It was intimacy, connection, completion. Every swallow sent ecstasy through him, and through the bond, into her. She gasped, clutching him tighter. The room spun. Her body sang with sensations that had no name, his pleasure and hers, tangled together, amplifying each other in an endless feedback loop. Enough, she felt him think. Any more and I'll lose control. But stopping was agony. She felt that too, his reluctance to break the connection, to return to separateness. His fangs withdrew slowly, reluctantly. He licked the wound closed with careful attention, his saliva sealing the punctures until only 2 small marks remained. Alara sagged against him, boneless and shaking. The bond thrummed between them like a plucked string, golden and unbreakable. She could feel him in her awareness now, a presence at the edge of her consciousness, warm and protective and utterly devoted. Look at me. Sebastian cupped her face, tilting it up. His lips were stained with her blood. His eyes had cleared to almost human, though satisfaction and wonder warmed them. How do you feel? Alive. The word was inadequate. She felt more than alive, connected, anchored, like she'd been drifting for 25 years and had finally found solid ground. Is it always like that? No. The first binding is most intense. His thumb wiped a tear from her cheek when had she started crying. But it will always be powerful, always be pleasurable. The covenant is designed that way. Mutual benefit, mutual desire. I can feel you. She pressed her hand to her chest. Here, your presence. Like you're part of me now. I am, and you're part of me. He rested his forehead against hers, breathing her in despite not needing air. I'll feel when you're in danger, when you're hurt. Your emotions will echo through me, and you'll sense the same from me. No more secrets, no more walls. The vulnerability of it struck her. You'll know everything I feel? Everything. A rueful smile, including right now your fear that you've made a terrible mistake. She couldn't deny it. The doubt crept in now that pleasure had faded. Had she bound herself too quickly? Traded one cage for another? It's not a cage. Sebastian answered her unspoken thought, the bond carrying it to him. You can still leave. The covenant doesn't trap you here. It just means I'll always know where you are, that I'll come if you call, that we're connected regardless of distance. But you need to feed from me. The book said proximity maintains it. I can feed from others, animals, criminals, those who won't be missed. His jaw tightened. I'll only take from you when you offer, never by compulsion, never without consent renewed each time. That's my vow to you. The sincerity in his voice, echoed through the bond, eased her doubt. This wasn't ownership, it was partnership. Two damaged souls, choosing each other despite impossible odds. What happens now? She asked. Now, you rest. The first feeding takes a toll on mortal bodies. You'll need sleep, food, time to adjust. He lifted her effortlessly, carrying her to the bed. I'll stay if you want. Or leave if you prefer solitude. She caught his hand before he could withdraw. Stay. Relief flooded through the bond, his relief, vast and grateful. He settled beside her on the bed, not touching but close enough that she felt his coolness radiating. Sebastian? She turned onto her side, facing him. In the firelight, he looked almost human, almost the boy she'd known. Do you regret it? The bond? No, absolute certainty. I've regretted many things across 16 years. Every life I've taken, every moment of weakness, every second I spent wishing I'd chosen death over transformation. His hand found hers, fingers intertwining. But this? You? Never. She squeezed his hand, feeling the connection pulse between them. Outside, night had fully fallen. Through the window, stars emerged one by one, ancient witnesses to impossible promises. Tell me about the night you died, she whispered. The real story. What happened after I left? His expression clouded, memories rising like specters. It's not pleasant. I want to know. All of it. No more secrets. He was silent for a long moment, fighting something internal. Then, slowly, he began to speak. And through the bond, she felt every word as truth, no lies possible anymore, no shields between them. Only the raw, terrible honesty of two souls bound by blood and choice. Only the beginning of understanding what that meant. His name was Lucien Mordaunt. Sebastian's voice carried the weight of confession. Each word pulled from depths he'd sealed shut for years. Through the bond, Alara felt his reluctance, his shame, the raw wound of memory still bleeding after 16 years. He came to me the night I lay dying, appeared at my window like smoke given form, beautiful and terrible. I thought he was an angel come to deliver me from suffering. Sebastian's laugh was bitter. I was so naive, so desperate. Alara said nothing, just held his hand tighter, listening, feeling his anguish pulse through their connection. He offered a choice, death or transformation, but he lied about the cost. Said I'd become strong, immortal, free from pain, never mentioned the hunger, never mentioned I'd have to kill to complete the change. Sebastian's fingers trembled in hers. By the time I understood, my family was already dead. I'd drained them in a frenzy I barely remember. My mother, my father, my little sister, all of them. Horror flooded through her, mixing with his guilt until she couldn't tell whose emotions were whose. You were 11, a child, old enough to choose, old enough to bear responsibility. He pulled his hand free, sitting up. Lucien taught me to feed, to hunt, to use the gifts of vampirism. Then he disappeared, left me alone with the weight of what I'd become. Why tell you this now? Sebastian stood, pacing to the window. Moonlight painted him in shades of silver and shadow. Because Lucien doesn't stay disappeared. He checks on his progeny, makes sure we're upholding the bloodline's reputation. His jaw clenched. And I felt him tonight. Through the Maker's bond, he's coming. Ice crystallized in Alara's veins. When? Soon. Days, perhaps. He's felt the new bonds I've created, Clara. You. It interests him. The way Sebastian said interests made it sound like a death sentence. He'll want to inspect you both, determine if you're worthy of the Thorn bloodline. And if we're not, he'll kill you both. Then punish me for poor judgment in creating the bonds. Sebastian's reflection in the glass looked haunted. Lucien has rules, standards. He doesn't tolerate weakness in his line. Alara rose despite her body's protests, crossing to him. The blood loss made her dizzy, but the bond steadied her. She drew on Sebastian's strength, felt it flow into her through their connection. Then we prepare. Train Clara. Make her strong enough to pass his inspection. In days? Sebastian turned, disbelief and desperate hope warring in his expression. Alara, it takes months to teach control, years to achieve the discipline Lucien demands. Clara is barely past her first feeding. Then we accelerate. She placed her hand on his chest, over the silent heart. You said the covenant gives me extended life, increased healing. Does it grant other benefits? Understanding dawned in his eyes. You want to use the bond, channel my strength directly. Can I? In theory, it's dangerous. The more you draw from me, the more vampire you become without actually transforming. Your body changes, adapts. You become something caught between human and undead. He covered her hand with his. Some mortals lose themselves that way. Become addicted to the power, to the feeling of immortality. They beg for transformation, unable to tolerate returning to human weakness. But it would help? Make me stronger, faster, able to teach Clara without being vulnerable myself? Yes. The admission came reluctantly. Then show me how. Before Sebastian could argue, a scream tore through the manor raw, terrified, distinctly Clara's voice. Sebastian moved instantly, blurring toward the door. Alara followed, the bond pulling her after him like a tether. They found Clara in the hallway outside her room, pressed against the wall, staring at nothing. Her eyes had gone solid crimson, no whites remaining. Her body shook with violence. What's wrong with her? Alara demanded. Bloodlust. Sebastian approached carefully, hands raised. Clara, listen to me. Focus on my voice. Clara's head snapped toward him with predatory precision. A snarl ripped from her throat. Hungry. So hungry. The feeding earlier wasn't enough. I need more. Need it now. I know. But you can't hunt yet. Can't control yourself. We'll feed you, but you have to calm down first. Can't. Tears streaked her face, crimson as blood. It burns. Under my skin, in my bones. Everything screams for blood. I'll die if I don't feed. She lunged at Alara. Sebastian intercepted, catching Clara mid-leap and slamming her against the wall. His hand wrapped around her throat, not choking but controlling. No, I told you she's protected, off limits, always. Then give me something else. Clara thrashed in his grip, desperate. Anyone, anything, I don't care. Just make it stop. Alara stepped forward despite Sebastian's warning growl. Through the bond, she felt his fear not for himself, but for her. Fear that Clara would break free, would tear into her throat before he could stop it. Let me help, Alara said calmly. Absolutely not. She needs blood. You can't leave to hunt without risking her escape. Alara met his eyes. The bond. I can draw from you, then let her feed from me. Your blood, through mine. It should work. Should? Sebastian's grip tightened on Clara. Alara, if this goes wrong, it won't. Trust me. She touched his face, letting confidence flow through their connection. You trusted me with the covenant. I'm trusting you with this. The conflict in his expression was painful to witness. But Clara's struggles were weakening not from control, but from the hunger consuming her from within. Without intervention, she'd lose herself completely, become a mindless predator, exactly what Lucien would destroy. Fine. Sebastian released Clara, who slumped against the wall. But I control the flow. The second something feels wrong, we stop. He pulled Alara close, positioning her between himself and Clara. His fangs extended, and this time when he bit, it wasn't sensual. It was efficient, clinical, opening the vein to create a channel. Blood welled, and he pressed Alara's wrist to Clara's lips. Drink, he commanded, slowly, carefully. Hurt her and I'll stake you myself. Clara's fangs sank into Alara's wrist. The sensation was different than Sebastian's bite. Rougher, less controlled, tainted with Clara's desperation. But through the bond, Sebastian's presence steadied her. His strength flowed into her veins, replacing what Clara took, maintaining balance. Alara felt Clara's hunger begin to ease, felt the newborn vampire's gratitude, her relief, her desperate desire not to disappoint the maker who'd saved her. The three of them connected in a triangle maker, covenant partner, progeny blood flowing between them like shared breath. This is what family feels like, Alara thought. Broken people choosing each other, protecting each other, bleeding for each other. Through the bond, She felt Sebastian's agreement, his fierce pride that she understood, his terror that Lucien would destroy this fragile beginning before it had a chance to root. Clara pulled back finally, gasping. Her eyes had cleared to normal crimson. Control reasserted itself, trembling but present. "Thank you." Clara's voice broke. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I know." Alara cradled her wrist, watching the punctures seal. "You're learning. We all are." Sebastian's hand rested on her shoulder, heavy with gratitude and dread. Through the bond, his thought echoed clear. Lucien will never accept this. What we've built, what we're becoming. Alara covered his hand with hers, answering through the connection. "Then we make him accept it. Or we fight." His response came dark and certain. "If we fight Lucien, we die. All of us." Outside, storm clouds gathered. In the distance, thunder rumbled, or perhaps something older, darker, approaching on wings of shadow and ancient hunger. The Maker was coming, and nothing would ever be the same. 3 days. That's how long they had before Lucien Mordaunt arrived at the manor's gates, his presence announced by the sudden death of every bird in the surrounding forest. Their bodies littered the grounds like dark snow, eyes vacant, necks broken by mere proximity to ancient power. Alara stood at the eastern window, watching Sebastian and Clara train in the courtyard below. Dawn light filtered through heavy clouds, painted them in shades of gray. Sebastian moved like water, demonstrating combat forms passed down through centuries. Clara mimicked him with increasing precision, her newborn strength tempered by 3 days of relentless discipline. Through the bond, Alara felt Sebastian's assessment of Clara's progress. Not enough, not nearly enough, but also his pride, his hope, his desperate wish that somehow they'd survive what was coming. The bond had changed Alara in those 3 days. She'd drawn from Sebastian repeatedly, flooding her system with vampire vitality. Her senses had sharpened. She could hear heartbeats from rooms away, smell blood beneath skin, see in darkness that should have been absolute. Her ankle had healed completely. Even her scars from childhood had faded, but the hunger had started. Not vampire hunger, she hadn't transformed. Something else. A craving for the power that thrummed through the bond, for the feeling of immortality dancing just beyond her grasp. "Be careful," Sebastian had warned last night, his fingers tracing her too pale skin. "You're walking the edge. Pull back or you'll fall." She hadn't pulled back. Now, as a massive black carriage rolled through the gates pulled by horses whose eyes glowed crimson, Alara wondered if she'd waited too long. "He's here," she whispered. Below, Sebastian and Clara froze mid-movement. Through the bond, Alara felt Sebastian's fear primal, absolute, the terror of prey recognizing a superior predator. He'd hidden it well, but now it flooded their connection like ice water. "Stay in your room," his thought commanded. "Don't come down. Don't let him see you yet. I'm not hiding. Alara, we face him together, or not at all." She felt his resignation, his terrible love threatening to drown them both. Then he was moving, Clara following, both of them heading toward the manor's entrance. Alara descended the stairs on legs steadier than they had any right to be. The borrowed vampire strength sang through her muscles, whispering promises of power, of permanence, of freedom from human fragility. She reached the entrance hall as the doors opened, no knock, no announcement. They simply swung wide as if the house itself had surrendered. Lucien Mordaunt stepped through. Beautiful. That was Alara's first thought. Beautiful the way poisonous flowers are beautiful, the way lightning is beautiful lethally, devastatingly, without mercy or conscience. He stood perhaps 6 feet tall, with black hair that fell past his shoulders and eyes like winter midnight. His features could have been carved from marble by a master sculptor obsessed with perfection. He wore black velvet and silver buttons, clothing from a century past, immaculate despite his journey. Power radiated from him in waves that made Alara's knees weak. Not the restrained control Sebastian maintained. This was power absolute, confident, terrible in its casual display. "Sebastian." Lucien's voice was silk over razors. "My prodigal progeny. How you've grown." Sebastian bowed a formal, antiquated gesture that spoke of centuries-old protocol. "Master Lucien, you honor us with your presence." "Do I?" Lucien's gaze swept the hall, cataloging everything. "Or do I come to correct mistakes before they fester?" His eyes found Clara first. She'd gone rigid, every instinct screaming at her to run. But she held her ground, head high despite the trembling in her hands. A newborn. How ambitious of you. Sebastian, creating progeny without my permission. Lucien circled Clara like a wolf evaluating prey. What makes you think you're capable of training another? You can barely control yourself. She's doing well, Sebastian said carefully, learning quickly. In a few months she doesn't have. Lucien's hand shot out, gripping Clara's chin, forcing her to meet his eyes. Show me your control, little one. Resist the compulsion. Prove you're worth keeping. Power slammed into Clara. Alara felt it through the bonds Lucien's will crushing down like a mountain, demanding submission, obedience, surrender. Clara's mind fractured under the pressure, her autonomy dissolving. Kneel, Lucien commanded. Clara's legs buckled. She dropped to her knees, a puppet with cut strings. Pathetic. Lucien released her, disgust evident. 3 days and she can't even shield against basic compulsion. Sebastian, what were you thinking? She needs more time. Time is a luxury for those who've earned it. Lucien's attention shifted, landing on Alara like a physical weight. His expression changed, surprise flickering across perfect features. And what precisely is this? He crossed to her in a blur. His hand caught her throat, before she could react, lifting her to her toes. Not choking, examining. His thumb pressed against her pulse, feeling the strength there, the borrowed vitality. A covenant bond. Wonder and fury warred in his voice. You've bound yourself to a mortal, created a permanent weakness, given her access to our blood, our power, our secrets. Through the bond, Alara felt Sebastian's terror spike. She's not a weakness, she's an abomination. Lucien's grip tightened fractionally. Alara gasped, black spots dancing in her vision. A human drinking vampire blood without transformation. Do you understand what she could become? What corruption you've invited into our bloodline? She's under control. I monitor the bond constantly. She won't what? Transform? Lose herself? Become addicted? Lucien leaned closer to Alara, inhaling deeply. She already reeks of hunger, of craving. Look at her eyes, Sebastian. Look at what you've made. Alara met Lucien's gaze, refusing to cower. Through the bond, she drew on Sebastian's strength, on his certainty, on his love. Let it armor her against the ancient vampire's disdain. I chose this, she said, voice steady despite the hand at her throat. Freely, knowingly, choice. Lucien's laugh was cruel. Mortals always think they choose, never understand they're moths drawn to flame, unable to resist self-immolation. He released her suddenly. She stumbled, caught by Sebastian who'd moved to her side. But perhaps that's fitting. You've created a family of broken things, Sebastian, the weak boy playing at strength. How? Tragically predictable. What do you want? Sebastian's arm wrapped around Alara, protective despite the futility. Why are you really here? Lucien smiled, and the room temperature dropped 10 degrees. To remind you what you are, what you owe, and to determine if your experiments warrant elimination or exploitation. He moved to the center of the hall, arms spread as if embracing the space. I'll stay 3 days, observe, test. At the end, I'll render judgment on whether Clara lives or dies, whether your little human pet keeps her mind or loses it to blood hunger. His gaze found Sebastian. Whether you've earned continued autonomy or require more direct supervision. And if we refuse your judgment, then I kill all 3 of you and start fresh. Perhaps create a progeny who understands obedience. Lucien's expression went cold, absolutely inhuman. You exist because I allow it, Sebastian. Everything you have, everything you are, comes from me. Never forget that. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Through the bond, Alara felt Sebastian's despair, his certainty that they couldn't win, that Lucien held every advantage. But she also felt something else, Clara's rage, burning bright despite her fear. The newborn vampire's fury at being dismissed, at being called weak, at watching the man who'd saved her beau before a monster. And beneath both emotions, through the complex web of bonds connecting them all, Alara felt her own revelation crystallizing. Lucien wasn't testing them. He was threatened by them, by what they represented, family chosen, not forced. Bonds built on consent, not domination. A different way of being vampire, one that didn't require absolute hierarchical control. He was here to destroy that possibility before it could spread, before Sebastian could prove that monsters might learn to be merciful. He's afraid. Alara sent through the bond. That's why he came. Sebastian's response carried grim understanding. Afraid things are the most dangerous. Lucien smiled as if hearing their exchange. 3 days, he repeated. Make them count. Then he ascended the stairs, claiming the master suite without asking, leaving them to stare at the dead birds littering the entrance hall, leaving them to plan what might be their last stand. The first test came at midnight. Alara woke to Sebastian's panic flooding the bond, sharp and acidic. She bolted upright, finding him standing at her window, silhouetted against moonlight. His posture radiated tension. He's taken Clara. The words came flat, emotionless, the only way Sebastian could speak them without shattering. For evaluation, alone, ice crystallized in Alara's stomach. Where? The old chapel on the grounds. He's forbidden me from interfering. Sebastian's hands curled into fists. If I go, he'll consider it a challenge. Kill her immediately just to prove he can. Then I'll go. Alara, I'm not his progeny. I don't fall under vampire law. She was already moving, throwing on a heavy robe against the winter cold. He can't forbid me from checking on Clara, not without admitting he considers me a threat. Through the bond, Sebastian's emotions warred pride, terror, desperate hope. If he hurts you, then you'll feel it, and you'll come. She crossed to him, pulling his face down to hers. Trust me. Trust that we're stronger together than his rules allow for. She kissed him brief, fierce, tasting of fear and defiance. Then she was gone, hurrying through darkened corridors toward the manor's rear exit. The chapel squatted in the gardens like a stone toad, its stained glass windows dark except for a single candle's glow. Dead roses climbed its walls, their thorns black with frost. As Alara approached, she heard voices, Lucien's smooth baritone and Clara's higher pitch, strained with stress. Not good enough, Lucien was saying. Sebastian has made you soft, taught you to see humans as anything other than food. That compassion will destroy you. Compassion makes me stronger. Clara's voice shook but held firm. I can walk among them, feed without killing. Build a life that's more than endless hunting. A life? Lucien's laugh was acid. You're dead, child. This existence is survival, not living. The sooner you accept that, the longer you'll last. Alara pushed open the chapel door. Both vampires turned, Lucien with mild interest, Clara with visible relief that immediately transformed to horror. You shouldn't be here, Clara breathed. Neither should she. Lucien gestured at Alara. Without supervision, without protection. How foolish. The chapel's interior was sparse stone floor, simple altar, walls lined with alcoves where saint statues had once stood. Now they housed only shadows. Lucien stood beside the altar, perfectly relaxed. Clara knelt on the stone floor, her dress torn, blood streaking her arms from wounds that were healing too slowly. What have you done to her? Alara demanded, testing her regeneration, her pain tolerance, her ability to heal under duress. Lucien tilted his head, examining Alara like a specimen. She fails, repeatedly. The blood Sebastian gave her is weak, diluted by his sentimentality. She's 3 days old, and already crippled by his flawed teachings. Lucien moved closer to Alara, each step deliberate. You, however, interest me more. A human drinking vampire blood, playing at immortality. Tell me, how much have you taken? How often do you crave it? The question hit too close. Alara felt the hunger stirring under her skin, awakened by proximity to Lucien's power. The urge to draw from the bond, to flood herself with Sebastian's strength until the human weakness burned away entirely. I'm in control. Are you? Are you? Lucien's hand shot out, gripping her wrist. His thumbnail sliced her palm, drawing blood. The scent filled the chapel, human blood laced with vampire vitality, an intoxicating hybrid. Let's see. He shoved Alara toward Clara. The newborn vampire's eyes flared crimson, pupils dilating as bloodlust hit. Her fangs extended involuntarily. Every muscle in her body tensed for the lunge. Feed, Lucien commanded Clara. Show me you can take what you need. Prove you're predator, not pet. Clara trembled, fighting the compulsion. Blood dripped from Alara's palm onto stone, each drop torture to the starving newborn. Through their connection, Alara felt Clara's desperation, the hunger tearing at her. Lucien's will crushing down, the terrible choice between betraying Alara and disobeying her maker's maker. No, Clara's voice cracked. I won't. You will, or I'll kill her anyway. At least if you feed, she dies with purpose. The logic was monstrous, perfect. Clara's control shattered under its weight. She lunged and Alara caught her, embracing her instead of fleeing. "It's okay," she whispered. "Take what you need. I trust you." Clara's fangs grazed Alara's throat but didn't pierce. The newborn vampire shook with the effort of restraint, whimpering against Alara's shoulder. "I can't. Please don't make me." Through the bond, Alara felt Sebastian's alarm. He was coming, consequences be damned. She had perhaps 30 seconds before he arrived, and this became a direct challenge to Lucien's authority. "Lucien," Alara said, still holding Clara. "You want to see control? Discipline? Watch this." She pulled from the bond not a trickle but a flood. Sebastian's power poured into her, transforming her. Her eyes blazed with borrowed light. Her body emanated cold that made the candles flicker. For a moment, she was more vampire than human, straddling the threshold. The hunger in Clara evaporated, replaced by submission to the greater predator now inhabiting Alara's skin. "Clara," Alara commanded, her voice layered with stolen authority. "Stand. Control yourself. You are more than hunger." Clara stood, her eyes clearing, humanity reasserting itself through sheer force of will and Alara's dominance. Lucien watched, expression unreadable. "Interesting. The human commands the vampire through borrowed power. Sebastian has taught you party tricks. Not tricks. Partnership." Alara released the power, letting it flow back through the bond. The humanity returned, leaving her shaking but triumphant. "We're stronger together than your hierarchies allow for. That's what you really fear." "Fear?" Lucien's smile was dangerous. "Child, I fear nothing, but I do recognize threats to our kind's survival." He moved with blinding speed, suddenly behind Alara, his hand in her hair, yanking her head back to expose her throat. Clara screamed, lunging forward, but Lucien's free hand caught her mid-leap and slammed her into the stone wall hard enough to crack it. "You think your little bond makes you special? Protected?" His breath was cold against Alara's ear. "I could drain you dry before Sebastian crosses the threshold. Snap your neck, rip out your throat. All your borrowed power means nothing against age and experience." Through the bond, Alara felt Sebastian's presence outside the chapel, held back by some invisible barrier Lucien had erected. Trapped, helpless, forced to watch through their connection as his maker threatened everything he'd tried to protect. "You could," Alara agreed, voice steady despite terror. "But you won't." "Why not?" "Because killing me proves we're right. That you're threatened. That the only way you can maintain control is through violence." She felt Sebastian's desperate plan forming through the bond, a sacrifice, a trade, himself for her safety. "And because if you hurt me, Sebastian will never forgive you. You'll lose him completely. Your perfect, tragic progeny will become your enemy." Lucien's grip tightened. "I can make more progeny, but you don't want to. You want him. Your first success. The boy who survived your transformation, who learned control, who became everything you hoped for." Alara let the words flow. Speaking truth, the bond revealed. "You're not here to destroy us. You're here because you're lonely. Because you want what we've built, family, connection, something beyond survival." The chapel fell silent. Even Clara's whimpering stopped. Lucien's hand remained in Alara's hair, holding her life by the thinnest thread. Then he laughed, genuine, surprised, almost human. Clever little mortal, using psychology against the immortal. "How?" "Refreshing." He released her, stepping back. The barrier dissolved. Sebastian crashed through the door, moving to Alara's side immediately, checking her for injuries with shaking hands. "I'm fine," she whispered. It worked. Lucien watched them, his expression complex amusement, calculation, and beneath it all, something that might have been longing. "2 more days," he said. "Then my judgment. But know this. Sebastian, your human is right. I am lonely. Eternally, infinitely lonely." He moved toward the door, pausing at the threshold. "The question isn't whether I'll destroy what you've built. It's whether I'll let you keep it. Or make you share it with me." He vanished into darkness, leaving them in the chapel with guttering candles and the weight of impossible choices. Clara slumped against the wall, bleeding and exhausted. Sebastian held Alara as if she might disappear. And through the bond, Alara felt what none of them could say. Lucien's loneliness was more dangerous than his cruelty, because desperate, lonely things did terrible things to avoid being alone. The second day dawned gray and bitter cold. Alara woke in Sebastian's arms, their bodies intertwined in her bed where they'd collapsed after the chapel confrontation. Through the windows, snow fell in lazy spirals, blanketing the manor grounds in deceptive peace. Dead birds still littered the courtyard, dark stains against white. Sebastian was awake. He never truly slept anymore. His fingers traced patterns on her shoulder, each touch reverent and terrified. "He'll ask me to choose," Sebastian whispered against her hair. "Today or tomorrow, before the 3 days end. Choose what? You or Clara. He won't allow me to keep both. Too much divided loyalty, too many bonds weakening my connection to him." Sebastian's arms tightened around her. "He'll frame it as mercy. Let me save one, sacrifice the other." Horror crawled up Alara's spine. "That's monstrous. That's Lucien. He believes love is weakness, that attachments beyond maker and progeny dilute our nature." Sebastian pulled back enough to meet her eyes. "I won't choose. I'll die before I choose. Then we all die." Alara cupped his face, feeling the borrowed vitality still humming under her skin from last night's power draw. "There has to be another way." "There isn't. Not in his world. Not by his rules." "Then we change the rules." Before Sebastian could respond, a scream tore through the manor. Not Clara. This voice was unfamiliar. Female, raw with terror and pain. They found Lucien in the grand hall, a village woman pinned against the wall by invisible force. She was young, perhaps 17, her dress torn, blood streaming from her nose. Her eyes rolled white with fear. Clara stood nearby, rigid, fighting visible compulsion. Tears streaked her face. "Ah!" The lovers emerge. Lucien didn't turn from his victim. Perfect timing. Today's lesson. The reality of our existence. "Let her go," Sebastian commanded, voice deadly calm. "Why?" "She's food, prey, a resource to be consumed." Lucien's hand hovered near the woman's throat. "Clara needs to feed properly. Not from willing donors or criminals, but from innocent flesh. To understand what we are." "I won't." Clara's voice broke. "Please, Master Lucien, don't make me." "You will, or I'll drain her myself, slowly, while you watch. Then bring another. And another. Until you understand that mercy is luxury we cannot afford." Alara felt Sebastian's rage building through the bond, saw his hands clench. He was seconds from attacking his maker, a suicidal move that would end with all of them destroyed. She stepped forward instead. "If this is about understanding what we are, let me make a trade." Lucien's attention shifted to her, curious. "Oh? You want Clara to feed from an innocent to prove vampires are monsters? Fine, but let me offer myself instead." Alara's pulse hammered, but her voice stayed steady. "I'm innocent, human, everything you claim vampires need. Let Clara feed from me. Prove your point without murdering a stranger." "No." Sebastian's hand caught her arm. "Alara, don't, it's the covenant bond," she continued, ignoring Sebastian. "I'm already giving him blood regularly. This just accelerates the process." Lucien released the village woman, who crumpled to the floor sobbing. With a negligent wave, he sent her fleeing toward the door, erasing her memory even as she ran. "Interesting proposal." Lucien circled Alara like a shark scenting blood. "But you misunderstand the lesson. It's not about feeding. It's about killing, taking life, feeling a heartbeat stop under your fangs." His smile was cruel. "Could you survive that, little mortal? Could Clara stop before draining you completely?" Through the bond, Sebastian's terror was absolute. "Don't. Please. I'll do anything." But Alara saw the trap clearly now. Lucien wanted Sebastian broken, wanted him to beg, to prove that love made him weak. The only way to win was to show that love made them stronger. "Clara can stop," Alara said firmly, "because we've taught her control. Because she's more than hunger. And because killing me would destroy the family she's found." "Family." Lucien spat the word. That delusion again. "Clara, come here." The compulsion dragged Clara forward. She fought every step, but Lucien's will was absolute. He positioned her before Alara, then seized Clara's hand and slashed her palm with one sharp nail. "Taste," he commanded, forcing Clara's bleeding palm to Alara's lips. The blood touched Alara's tongue cold, alien, intoxicating. Power exploded through her system, vampire vitality multiplying the strength she'd drawn through the bond. Her body convulsed, transforming, cells rewriting themselves in real time. Her eyes burned crimson. Fangs erupted from her gums. The hunger crashed over her like a tidal wave. Not human hunger, but something vast and bottomless, demanding blood, demanding life, demanding everything. Now, Lucien whispered, you understand. This is what Clara feels every moment. This is what we are. So feed, little mortal becoming monster. Take what you crave. Prove you're no different than us. The world had gone sharp, crystalline. Alara could hear Sebastian's non-existent heartbeat, see the blood flowing beneath Clara's skin, smell the life radiating from every living thing in a mile radius. The hunger screamed at her to feed, to drain, to satisfy the burning. She looked at Clara terrified, guilty, waiting for the monster Alara was becoming to attack. Instead, Alara bit down on her own lip, flooding her mouth with her half-transformed blood. The pain was excruciating but grounding. She spat the blood onto the marble floor. No, she gasped, fighting the hunger with everything she had. I choose to be more than hunger. Impossible. Lucien's eyes narrowed. You've tasted Clara's blood. You're transforming. The hunger is absolute. Not if I have something stronger to hold on to. Alara reached for Sebastian through the bond, found his consciousness, and pulled. Not power this time, humanity. His memories of being human, of loving without hunger, of choosing compassion over instinct. The transformation stuttered. Her fangs receded slightly. The crimson in her eyes flickered between red and her natural brown. Lucien stared, genuine shock crossing his features. You're reversing it, drawing humanity through the bond instead of power. That should be impossible. Everything we've done should be impossible, Sebastian said, moving to Alara's side. His hand found hers, and the bond flared brilliant gold. That's what you can't accept. That the rules you've lived by for centuries aren't absolute. That love isn't weakness, it's evolution. Evolution. Lucien's voice went cold, dangerous, or corruption. Dilution of our nature until we're neither human nor vampire. Just pathetic things caught between. Maybe that's exactly what we need to be, Clara said quietly. She'd moved to Alara's other side, completing the triangle. Something new. Something that doesn't require us to be monsters. The three of them stood united, bonds crackling between them, gold for covenant, silver for maker and progeny, and something new forming between Clara and Alara, copper bright and fierce. Lucien watched, his expression unreadable. Outside, the snow fell harder, wind howling against ancient stone. Finally, he spoke. You've forced my hand. Tomorrow night I render final judgment. But know this. His gaze swept all three of them. I will not allow this corruption to spread beyond these walls. Either you prove it's viable, that this new way can survive in a world designed to crush it, or I end all three of you and salt the earth where you fell. How do we prove it? Sebastian asked. Survive me. Lucien's smile was terrible, beautiful, absolutely merciless. Tomorrow at midnight, I hunt you, all three of you, through the Blackwood, where the old magic runs strong. If you survive until dawn, I acknowledge your way has merit. I leave you in peace, perhaps even join you in exploring this evolution. And if we don't survive, then you were wrong, and the world is better off without your weakness spreading. He ascended the stairs, leaving them in the hall with the scent of blood and snow and impossible choices. Alara slumped against Sebastian, the aborted transformation leaving her shaking. Through the bond, she felt his grim determination crystallizing into strategy. We can't win, Clara whispered. He's too old, too powerful. We don't need to win, Sebastian said. Just survive. And we have advantages he doesn't expect. What advantages? Sebastian looked at Alara, at Clara, at the bonds connecting them in ways Lucien had never imagined possible. Each other. Midnight came with frost and silence. Alara stood in the manor's entrance hall, dressed in practical riding clothes. Sebastian had found dark wool, sturdy boots, a cloak lined with fur. Clara wore similar attire, though her supernatural nature made the cold irrelevant. Sebastian checked weapons with methodical precision. Silver daggers that would wound even vampires, wooden stakes, vials of substances Alara didn't recognize. The Blackwood at night is treacherous, he explained, his voice clinical despite the fear pulsing through their bond. Ancient magic predates even Lucien. Things that shouldn't exist hunt there. We'll face those threats plus Lucien himself. How do we fight him? Clara's hands trembled as she accepted a silver blade. He's faster, stronger, older than all of us combined. We don't fight, we survive. Sebastian turned to Alara, his expression grave. You're the most vulnerable. Human, despite the vampire vitality you've borrowed. If he corners you, he won't. Alara gripped the knife Sebastian had given her. Through the bond, she felt his desperate plan forming, using himself as bait, sacrificing his safety for theirs. And you're not playing martyr. We survive together or not at all. The grandfather clock began to chime. Midnight. As the 12th stroke faded, Lucien's voice drifted from everywhere and nowhere. Run, little family. Let's see if your love survives when death hunts you through darkness. The manor's doors blew open. Wind howled through the hall, extinguishing candles, plunging them into moonlit shadow. Beyond the threshold, the blackwood waited, ancient trees twisted into grotesque shapes, their branches clawing at a sky choked with storm clouds. Go, Sebastian commanded. Stay together. Head for the old stone circle at the forest's heart. The magic there might shield us until dawn. They ran. The forest swallowed them immediately. Moonlight barely penetrated the canopy, leaving them in near total darkness. Alara's borrowed vampire senses helped. She could see better than any human, hear the whisper of wind through dead leaves, smell the corruption that clung to certain paths. But Lucien could do all that infinitely better. A laugh echoed through the trees, close, then distant, then close again. Playing with them, herding them like sheep toward slaughter. Left, Sebastian hissed, pulling them down a narrow deer path. Thorns tore at their clothes. Something howled in the distance, not wolves. Something older, awakened by Lucien's presence. Clara stumbled, catching herself against a gnarled oak. I can't. The compulsion. He's calling me, ordering me to stop, to wait for him. Fight it. Alara grabbed Clara's shoulders. You're stronger than his commands. You've proven it. Have I? Tears streaked Clara's face. Or have I just been lucky? He's my grandsire. His blood made Sebastian, who made me. The connection goes soul deep. Through the bond, Alara felt Sebastian's anguish. He'd known this might happen, that Lucien's hold on Clara through their bloodline connection could override her will. Then we break the connection, Alara said suddenly. The plan crystallized, insane and perfect. Sebastian, the covenant bond, can it be extended? Can I form one with Clara too? In theory. But you're already walking the edge of transformation. Adding another bond might push you over entirely. Sebastian's eyes blazed in the darkness. You'd become vampire, permanently. But I'd be free of Lucien's bloodline, and so would Clara, if our bond superseded his claim. Alara looked between them. Isn't that worth it? Not if you didn't choose it freely. Sebastian cupped her face. I won't let you sacrifice your humanity for us. It's not sacrifice if it's what I want. The truth of it resonated through her bones. She'd been walking toward this moment since the night Sebastian had saved her. I don't want to go back to being powerless, to fearing every shadow, to being alone. A tree exploded 10 feet away, Lucien's power. Warning shot. His voice drifted through the carnage. Touching, but ultimately futile. You can't outrun eternity, Sebastian. You can't hide what's mine. Do it, Clara gasped, fighting the compulsion dragging her backward. Please. I don't want to be his puppet. Sebastian's jaw clenched. Through the bond, Alara felt him calculating odds, weighing options, fighting his nature that demanded he protect her even from her own choices. If I do this, he said finally, there's no reversing it. You'll be vampire, immortal, bound to blood and night forever. I know. Alara offered her wrist. I choose it. I choose you. Both of you. Sebastian's fangs extended. But before he could bite, Lucien materialized from shadow, slamming into Sebastian with enough force to shatter the tree behind them. Sebastian crashed through timber, blood streaming from his mouth. No! Clara lunged at Lucien, who caught her casually by the throat. Foolish child. Did you think I wouldn't hear? Wouldn't understand your pathetic plan? Lucien hurled Clara aside. She hit the ground hard, bones cracking audibly. The covenant bond. Such mortal sentimentality. As if consent and choice matter in the face of power. Alara ran to Sebastian, helping him stand. Through the bond, she felt his ribs knitting, his body repairing itself with supernatural speed. But he was hurt, weakened, and Lucien hadn't even tried yet. You're wrong, Alara said, facing Lucien. Choice is the only thing that matters. It's what separates us from monsters. Monsters? Lucien's laugh was acid. We are monsters, little mortal. Predators wearing human faces. The sooner you accept that, the longer you'll survive. He moved faster than thought, suddenly before her, his hand wrapped around her throat, not squeezing yet, just holding, feeling her pulse hammer against his palm. "I could turn you right now," he whispered. "Force the transformation. Make you mine instead of his. Would that be choice? Or just different chains?" Through the bond, Sebastian's rage exploded. He attacked his maker with desperate fury, claws extended, fangs bared, all pretense of restraint abandoned. The two vampires collided mid-air, a blur of violence that tore through trees and earth. But Lucien was too old, too skilled. He threw Sebastian into a boulder hard enough to crack stone. Sebastian slumped, conscious but barely, blood pooling beneath him. "Stay down," Lucien commanded. Compulsion absolute. Sebastian's body locked in place, unable to move despite his desperate struggling. "And watch while I demonstrate what your precious love costs." He turned back to Alara. Clara had regained her feet, circling, looking for an opening. But Lucien's attention was fixed solely on Alara now. "I'll make you an offer," Lucien said. "A genuine choice. Become vampire mine, not his. Join me. Be my companion through eternity. Learn what real power feels like. In exchange, I spare them both. Let Sebastian keep his pathetic found family, minus you." "Don't," Sebastian gasped through the compulsion. "Alara, don't. Or refuse," Lucien continued. "And watch me kill them. Slowly, starting with Clara, ending with my disappointing progeny. Then leave you here, human and alone, exactly as you began, alive but powerless, free but broken." The choice crystallized with terrible clarity. Save herself or save them. Freedom or love. The impossible mathematics of sacrifice. Alara met Sebastian's eyes across the clearing. Through the bond, she felt everything, his love, his terror, his desperate wish that she'd choose herself, save herself, live even if he died. She felt Clara's grief, the newborn vampire's certainty that this was her fault, that she'd brought destruction to the only family she'd known. And beneath both, she felt her own truth, that she'd been alone for 25 years. That loneliness was its own kind of death. That love, messy, complicated, dangerous love, was worth any price. "I have a third option," Alara said. She grabbed the silver knife from her belt and slashed her own palm deep. Blood welled, rich with borrowed vampire vitality. The scent exploded through the clearing, human and not human, mortal and immortal, impossible and perfect. Then she ran not away from Lucien, but toward the stone circle Sebastian had mentioned, the ancient magic that predated even vampire hierarchies. Lucien laughed, giving chase. Running? How delightfully futile. But Alara wasn't running from him. She was running to something. Through the bond, she'd felt Sebastian's knowledge of the forest, of its oldest secrets. The stone circle wasn't just a place, it was a threshold. A place where choices made became binding, where oaths spoken carried the weight of eternity. She burst into the clearing. 7 standing stones arranged in perfect circle, each carved with symbols that hurt to look at. Magic thrummed through the ground, old and wild and indifferent to vampire politics. Lucien appeared at the circle's edge but stopped. Something held him the magic, recognizing him as bound by too many oaths, too many bloodline ties. He couldn't enter without sacrificing some of his power. "Clever girl, but you've just trapped yourself. The circle won't hold me forever." "It doesn't need to." Alara stood at the circle's center, her bleeding palm raised. "Sebastian, Clara, I call you. By bond of blood and choice, I call you here." Through their connections, the summons burned. Sebastian's body unlocked from Lucien's compulsion, the circle's magic superseding it. He staggered into the clearing. Clara followed, both of them crossing into the circle's protection. "What are you doing?" Sebastian demanded. "Choosing." Alara looked at each of them. "Clara, drink from my wound. Just a little. Enough to start the covenant bond. Alara, trust me." She offered her bleeding palm to Clara, who hesitated only a moment before pressing her lips to the wound. The connection sparked immediately, copper bright, fierce, binding them together. Through the dual bonds now, Alara felt both vampires' awareness flooding into her. Sebastian's centuries-old control, Clara's newborn hunger. And threading through both, her own humanity, the warmth, the choice, the conscious decision to bridge the gap between mortal and monster. "Now you, Sebastian, finish it. Make me what I choose to be." Sebastian's eyes blazed with tears that couldn't fall. "You'll lose the sunrise, the warmth, the simple human joys, everything you are. I'll gain eternity with you. With both of you. A family chosen, not forced. She pulled him close, offering her throat. Make me yours, truly, finally. His fangs sank into her neck. The transformation was fire and ice simultaneously. Her human cells dying, vampire vitality replacing them, her entire being rewritten in the space between heartbeats. The pain was exquisite, terrible, perfect. Through the bonds, she felt Sebastian and Clara holding her consciousness, keeping her anchored as humanity dissolved and immortality took root. Their love was a lifeline, pulling her through death into something beyond. Her heart beat once, twice, then stopped, and restarted slower, powered by magic rather than biology. Not dead, not alive, something new. Her eyes opened, and the world had transformed. Every sense amplified beyond imagination. She could hear Sebastian's and Clara's heartbeats slow, measured, eternal. Could smell the magic in the stones, the approaching dawn, the blood in every living thing for miles. And the hunger. God, the hunger. But it didn't control her. The bonds held it in check: Sebastian's discipline, Clara's compassion, her own choice to be more than appetite. Outside the circle, Lucien watched with an expression caught between fury and wonder. Impossible. 3 bonds, 3 consciousnesses merged. You've created something that shouldn't exist. Then maybe it's time for new things to exist. Alara's voice carried new harmonics layered with power. She stood, Sebastian and Clara flanking her. United, unbreakable. The hunt isn't over, Lucien said. Dawn is still hours away. No. Alara stepped toward the circle's edge. The hunt ended when you gave me a choice and I chose differently than you planned. You can kill us maybe. You're older, stronger. But we're connected in ways you've never experienced. Our strength is shared. Our love is armor. And we will fight you with everything we have. Or, Sebastian added quietly, you could join us. Not as master, as equal, as family. Learn what we're learning, that immortality doesn't have to mean isolation. For a long moment, Lucien stood frozen. Through her new senses, Alara felt his conflict, centuries of loneliness, warring with pride, with fear, with desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, there was another way. The eastern sky lightened fractionally, dawn approaching. You've won, Lucien said finally. Not through strength, through something I'd forgotten existed, through choice freely given and bonds freely formed. He bowed formal, acknowledging defeat. I release you, Sebastian. You and yours. The bloodline debt is paid. The magical weight that had pressed on Sebastian for 16 years suddenly lifted. Alara felt it through their bond, freedom, vast and terrifying and perfect. And the offer? Sebastian asked. To join us? Lucien's smile was sad, ancient. Perhaps, in time, when I've learned to be something other than what I am. He looked at Alara. You've shown me it's possible. That evolution might not mean extinction. That's enough. For now. He vanished as dawn's first ray pierced the canopy. The Blackwood exhaled, releasing tension, ancient magic settling back into dormancy. The 3 of them stood in the stone circle as sunlight spread through the forest. It didn't burn, not yet. New vampires had a brief grace period before the sun became enemy. We should go inside, Clara said, before we test those limits. But Alara couldn't move. She watched dawn paint the sky gold and rose and impossible blue. Her last sunrise as human had been hidden by storm clouds. This first as vampire was glory incarnate. I chose this, she said softly. I chose you, both of you, and I'd choose it again, every time. Sebastian kissed her temple. Clara took her hand, and together, bound by blood and choice and love that transcended death, they walked home through the breaking day. Epilogue, Dawn's promise. 3 years later, Alara stood at the eastern window watching sunrise paint the valley gold. The village below had changed, grown more tolerant, more willing to accept the strange family in the old manor. The healers who never aged, the pale doctor who only took night appointments, the quiet girl who'd survived what should have killed her. They'd built something impossible, a home that bridged mortal and immortal worlds. Clara trained new vampires in control and compassion. Sebastian shared his medical knowledge, advancing human medicine through careful anonymity. And Alara walked between both worlds, remembered humanity even as immortality sang through her veins. The sun didn't burn her anymore. Not since she'd learned the final secret, that love freely chosen could transform even curses. That family built on consent rather than compulsion could rewrite reality's rules. Through the window, dawn broke fully light, spilling across the world like grace, like promise, like hope eternal. Sebastian's arms wrapped around her from behind. "Beautiful," he murmured. "It is," she agreed. "I meant you." She turned, kissing him as morning blazed around them. Immortal, impossible, infinitely, perfectly chosen. And somewhere in the world, Lucien watched his progeny's progeny building something new, learning, perhaps, that eternity was long enough to change, long enough to hope, long enough to love.